Imagine this. You've got this patterned board, right? And maybe it's used for some really intense strategic war game.
Okay, yeah.
But then that exact same board, it could also be used for like a quiet solo puzzle game.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
It really shows how adaptable people are, taking one thing and finding totally different ways to play with it.
Exactly. And that's what we're diving into today. You were curious about the history and just the sheer variety of board games across different civilizations.
Hmm.
So our mission is to explore, how they evolved, how boards got reused, and maybe touch on the social side of gaming back then.
It's a great topic. And our guide for this is the book, Board and Table Games for Many Civilizations, the second edition. Really comprehensive.
It really is. And it's worth mentioning it wasn't just one person's effort.
Oh, right. Do you acknowledge that?
Yeah, the author gives a lot of credit to Dr. W.S. Mitchell, Raymond Dawson for Chinese insights, M. Cacciarani for Italian and Spanish games, Agnes Kramer, Ms. K. Kosbikar, Essa Fokwa, A.P. Mohideen, Professor Eric Thompson. Quite a team.
That collective effort really makes a difference in piecing together this kind of history.
But as we start, there's this key challenge, isn't there? The fact that these boards were so multi-purpose.
That's a huge point. It makes figuring out the exact history of specific games really tricky sometimes.
Because finding an old board doesn't automatically tell you what game was played on it, right?
Exactly. A board found in Egypt might look like one found in Rome, but were they playing the same game? Maybe. Maybe not. Depends on the time, the culture.
Okay, let's dig into that repurposing idea. The book has examples, like the standard chessboard.
Right. The checkered one.
We know it for chess, obviously, a war game. But it was also used for drafts or checkers.
Yeah, and that simple grid, that regular pattern, it just lends itself to different kinds of strategic movement, doesn't it?
Mm.
Capturing, blocking, controlling space.
And then there's the Ashtapada board, not one most people probably know.
No, probably not.
Used for Chaturanga, another war game, but the book suggests it might have also been used for race games. That seems like a completely different thing.
It does, but maybe the layout, perhaps with markings we don't always see on fragments, could work for both. A race game is just about moving along a path, while a war game is about conflict on that path.
Huh. Okay. And another one, Fox and Geese. That's definitely a hunt, a kind of war game.
Mm-hmm. One versus many.
But that same board was used for solitaire, a game of position just for one person.
Yeah, the pattern of points and lines becomes a spatial puzzle in solitaire, while in Fox and Geese is the framework for chasing and capturing.
So with all this board swapping going on, what's the big takeaway for understanding these old games?
I think the main thing is you just can't rely only on the board itself. Finding a board is, well, it's just step one.
Right. It doesn't mean everyone everywhere used it the same way.
Precisely. We need more context.
Like what else helps?
Well, written rules are the gold standard, obviously. But also mentions in old texts, letters, maybe artwork showing people actually playing a specific game on a certain board.
Ah, okay.
And finding the game pieces themselves, if they're distinct enough.
That makes sense. The board's the stage, but you need the script and the actors too. Okay,
Yeah.
so keeping that complexity in mind, where do we go first?
The book starts with a look at early race games. Seems like a really fundamental type of game found in lots of cultures.
Race games. Basically, get your pieces from the start to the finish line first, often with some luck involved.
That's the gist, yeah. And a great example discussed is Knight from Korea.
Okay, tell me about it.
What's amazing is how long it's been around, apparently pretty much unchanged for centuries. It's a type of cross and circle game.
Cross and circle, what does that mean, Strudler-wise?
Typically, you've got a circular track, but it's intersected by, well, a cross shape. This creates paths, maybe some special squares. For Knight, movement comes from throwing 4 wooden blocks.
Blocks, not dice. How does that work?
Each block has, like, a flat side and a rounded side, maybe marked differently. How many of one side land facing up tells you how far you move your horses around the track. Highest throw goes first, then you move based on your throws. The goal is to get all your horses around and off the board.
So it's chance with the throw, but strategy in which piece you move.
Yeah.
The book mentions extra throws for rolling a 5 or 4.
Yeah, that adds a bit of excitement, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Get a good roll, get another go before you move, let you make a big jump.
And it mentions cardinal marks on the board, maybe safe spots.
Seems likely, yeah. Or maybe they had some other function. And we know this isn't just guesswork about the board.
Right, there's physical evidence.
Yeah, they found a stucco board in Korea that looks remarkably like the Knight boards still used. There's like a direct link, centuries old.
Wow, a living artifact of a game. Okay, let's jump continents. Zon All, played by the Kiowa people in Oklahoma. Sounds very different.
It is. The board is actually made on the ground. 40 small stones mark the path, and the spaces between them are the points you move on.
On the ground.
Okay. And in the middle, there's a special all stone where they throw 4 dicing sticks.
Sticks again, not dice. And how do they move?
Each side has 1 runner piece. The sticks determine how far it moves. The book also mentions these really interesting features named after the landscape, a gap called River in Flood, others called dry streams.
So the game is tied into their environment. That's cool.
It really paints a picture, yeah. Though the text doesn't detail exactly how those features affected play.
Okay, next up. Patoli, also North America. This one sounds complicated.
It seems it was. Used a cross-shaped board, again, with lots of divisions marked out, and the dice were 5 large black beans with holes drilled in them.
Beans as dice. How did the scoring work?
Depending on how many holes landed face up, you got different scores, 1 point for 1 hole, up to 10 points if all 5 landed holes up. That score told you how far to move.
Interesting, but we don't know everything about it.
Unfortunately, no. The book says the info we have isn't quite enough to, fully reconstruct how to play it today. It's a bit of a lost puzzle.
Shame. Sounds fascinating. And then there's a connection to a game we do know.
Right. It briefly mentions Ludo. Says Ludo is basically a modified version of Pachisi, which came to England around 1896.
Ah, Pachisi.
Yeah, the big change for Ludo was using a standard cubic die instead of the cowrie shells or long dice or sticks used in Pachisi in games like Patoli. Shows that standardization over time.
From beans to a 6-sided die.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've done linear races, cross and circle, now spiral games. First one is Laib el Marifib, the hyena game, from the Bagar Arabs in Sudan. Sounds exotic.
It really does. And the board is amazing. It's a spiral groove just drawn in the sand.
In the sand, seriously.
Yeah, with holes along the spiral for the days of a journey. There's a bigger hole in the middle of the well, and you start at the village.
Wow. And the pieces.
Each player has 1 marker, and it represents their mother.
Their mother. That adds a personal layer. What of the dice?
3 split sticks, green on one side, white on the other. You toss them and count how many white sides land up 0, 1, 2, or 3.
Okay, very different system. The book mentions tabas. What are they?
They represent baggage. You need them for certain things, especially to a well. Like you need 2 tabas to wash clothes at the well and another 2 to start the journey back.
So a resource management element mixed into the race. What if you don't have enough tabas?
Then your mother marker just has to wait at the well until you earn more on later turns. If you roll a 2, 3, or 6 while waiting, you can sort of bank those points for later. It's quite clever.
That is clever. A journey in the sand. That sounds incredibly atmospheric. Okay, let's travel again South India for Thayam.
Right, Thayam. This one usually has a board with marked squares in the middle of each side. The palaces, and a central square, the keep or castle. Players start with 4 pieces off the board.
And movement, is it dice?
Cowrie shells, usually 4, or sometimes seeds. How they land determines the score. Like with shells, mouth side up counts, convex side doesn't. Specific combinations give different moves.
Palaces and a keep sound like safe spots.
Exactly. Pieces on those marked squares can't be captured. The book compares it to, like, sanctuary, even an enemy is safe there. Multiple pieces can share a palace square.
So they become strategic points to aim for, not just for safety, but maybe for planning your next move out.
Absolutely, you can build up forces there.
Yeah.
And there's this concept of twin pieces.
Twins, how does that work?
If you get 2 of your pieces onto the palace square directly opposite your starting side, you can declare them a twin.
Okay.
And a twin piece, even if it's on a normal square, can only be captured by another twin, so they're much tougher.
Ah, so creating twins gives you a big advantage, offensively and defensively. What about regular captures?
If you land on a square with an opponent's piece, as long as it's not a safe spot, you send their piece back to the start.
Okay, standard capture rule.
And as a bonus for making the capture, you get an extra turn.
Right, that keeps the momentum going. Okay, we've seen various race games. Now, ancient Egypt, the game of 30 squares, sounds really old.
It is. We have actual boards like the Akor board in Cairo and drawings of people playing it from tombs around, say, 2000 BC.
Wow, so we know what it looked like and that people played it. Do we know the rules?
That's the catch. No. Despite the fines, no written rules survived.
So it's another mystery.
Mostly. But based on the board 30 squares, usually in a 3x10 layout, the general idea is probably a race game, maybe a bit like backgammon.
An ancestor of backgammon, maybe?
That's the speculation, yeah. The book sketches out some possible rules, maybe 10 pieces each. starting on the board, moving based on dice throws. But it's educated guesswork.
Still, fascinating to think backgammon's roots might go back that far. Okay, let's move forward in time to ancient Rome, Ludus Duodecim Scriptorum, and Tabula.
Right. Ludus Duodecim Scriptorum means game of 12 lines. Ovid mentions it. But again,
No rules survived.
sadly, no complete rules. And it seems it got replaced anyway.
By Tabula.
Yeah. Around the 1st century A.D., Tabula was apparently a bit simpler, using 2 rows of points instead of 3, or 12 lines. And it became very fashionable.
Fashionable enough for an emperor to be obsessed. Claudius, yeah.
That's the one. Emperor Claudius loved Tabula.
Yeah.
Apparently even wrote a book about it, now lost, of course, and had a board built into his carriage so he could play on the move.
Now that's dedication. Doesn't say if people thought that was weird, even then.
The source doesn't really say, but it definitely shows his passion.
A real gamer emperor. And it wasn't just casual play, was it? There's that story about Emperor Zeno.
Oh yeah, much later, around the 5th century A.D., Emperor Zeno had such a disastrously bad run of luck in a game of Tabula, made such a terrible move based on the dice, that the exact position of the pieces was recorded.
Recorded just because it was such a bad game.
Well, apparently so. It tells you something about how seriously they took it, maybe the gambling aspect too.
Wow. So, do we know more about how Tabula itself was played compared to its predecessor?
A bit more, yes. We know it used 3 dice, not 2 like modern backgammon.
3 dice, okay.
Pieces entered in the first section, moved around counterclockwise, and crucially, both players moved in the same direction around the board.
Oh, not opposite directions like backgammon?
Nope, same direction. And a key rule was about closed points. If you had 2 or more of your pieces on a single point, your opponent couldn't land there. They were blocked.
Ah, okay, creating blockades. That sounds very strategic, mixed with the luck of 3 dice. And speaking of dice, they obviously played a big role.
Huge role, not just in Rome, but everywhere. Introducing chance, determining moves, and often linked with gambling.
Roman gambling was notorious, wasn't it?
Very much so. People betting fortunes on dice rolls. But it wasn't just Romans. There's that story about the 2 King Olafs.
Oh yeah, Norway and Sweden settling a border dispute with dice.
Exactly, around 1020 A.D. Couldn't agree on who owned a district, so they decided to roll for it. The Swedish king rolled 2 6s.
A good start. Does it say who won the district?
The excerpt doesn't actually finish the story there, but it just shows how high the stakes could be using dice for diplomacy, essentially.
Incredible. So from settling borders to imperial travel games, boards and dice have been central for ages. As we wrap this up, what's the main thread connecting the boards and the games?
I think it circles back to that first point. The boards could be reused, yes, but to really get a feel for the game, you need the rules, the context, the culture around it.
The board is the hardware, maybe, but the rules and the players are the software.
That's a good way to put it, yeah. The physical object is just part of the picture.
Okay, so let's quickly recap. We've seen how adaptable game boards were not just one game per board. We looked at race games like Korean Ute, the Kiyoazana-al, Patoli.
Explored the spiral hyena game in the sand, Tayam with its palaces and twins.
Touched on the mysteries of Egypt's 30 squares, and the Roman games like Tabula, fueled by dice and emperors.
And we stressed how tricky it is to reconstruct these games just from the boards, needing that extra evidence.
Right. So, the final thought to leave you with. This history shows amazing human ingenuity, that constant desire to play, compete, connect. Think about how these ancient games, with their different mechanics, sticks, beans, spirals, safe zones, might echo in the games we play today. What threads connect a Roman dice game or a Korean race game to what's on your shelf now?
Yeah, where did those ideas go? It's a fascinating lineage to think about.